Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare.
Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Gopi Jana Balabha Girivara Dhari 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 Jasodanandana Brajachanurandana Jasodanandana Brajachanurandana Jamuna Tira Vanachadi Jamuna Tira Vanachadi Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Madhava Kunja Vihari Gopi Jana Balabha Girivara Dhari Gopi Jana Balabha Girivara Dhari Gopi Jana Balabha Girivara Dhari Jasodanandana Brajachanurandana Jasodanandana Brajachanurandana Jamuna Tira Vanachadi Jamuna Tira Vanachadi Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Jayom Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivijagasharja Astatarasatasi Simadis Divine Grace Sri Bhakti Vedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Gora Premanandi. Now whose house is this? Your house. Your house. And you need probably a little introduction to Lord Chaitanya, right? You're familiar? A little introduction will be good. Lord Chaitanya. You're from West Bengal, okay. Okay, very good. Have you read Chaitanya Charitamrita or Chaitanya Bhagavata in Bengali? No. Someday. Bhakti Siddhanta, Prabhupada's spiritual master Bhakti Siddhanta, said, the day will come where people will learn Bengali simply so that they can read Chaitanya Charitamrita, the story of Lord Chaitanya's life. We're reading from Chaitanya Bhagavata, which is an earlier rendering of his pastimes in Navadvip. We also heard this really nice glorification of Chaitanya Charitamrita. Bhakti Siddhanta, Prabhupada's spiritual master, said, if you're caught in the rising waters of devastation at the end of the day of Brahma, try to gather together three literatures, Bhagavad Gita, Srimad Bhagavatam, and Chaitanya Charitamrita for solace. But if it's too much turbulence and too much difficult, then you can let go of Bhagavad Gita, but hold on to Bhagavatam and Chaitanya Charitamrita. And if that's too much, let go of Srimad Bhagavatam and hold on to Chaitanya Charitamrita. So it's a very special literature in many ways, very elevated literature, Chaitanya Charitamrita. And the author of Chaitanya Charitamrita offers his respects to the author of this Chaitanya Bhagavata, addressing him as the Vyasadeva of Gaura Lila. Vyasadeva wrote about Krishna's pastimes, and Vrindavan Das wrote about Gaurachandra's pastimes, Lord Chaitanya's pastimes. So we've been reading of the pastimes of Lord Chaitanya, following first the deliverance of Jagai and Madhai. Jagai and Madhai, yes? Okay. And then following the deliverance of Jagai and Madhai, there were two chapters which we read yesterday evening. One was appreciating how profound it was that Jagai and Madhai were delivered. The demigods came and participated in the kirtan, glorifying Lord Chaitanya for being so merciful. And then the next chapter was Madhai he was forgiven by Lord Chaitanya and by Nityananda. He still felt deeply sad that he had offended Lord Nityananda. So he was chanting 2 lakhs of names of the Lord every day, which means 2 times 64 mantras. And he was crying constantly, feeling remorse for having thrown a clay pot and hit Nityananda's head, drawing blood. So Nityananda came, seeing him in that very remorseful condition, and he asked him why. And Madhai offered prayers and prayers and prayers. There's like a lot of Puranic narrations of who Lord Nityananda is in Lord Ramachandra's Leela, in Krishna's Leela, and so forth. His various expansions. So in Lord Ramachandra's pastimes, Lakshmana is the same as Balaram is to Krishna, as Balaram is to Krishna, Lakshmana is to Lord Ramachandra, and so forth. So we heard this wonderful set of prayers, and Lord Nityananda embraced him and said, you need not feel these feelings anymore. I'll enter into your heart personally and fill you with ecstatic love for Krishna. And it was, his sadness was over. There's further details. So now we're beginning chapter 16. And the title of it is Lord's Acceptance of Suklambara rice. Suklambara is a name of a brahmachari. So he's commonly called Suklambara brahmachari. And in Krishna's Leela, he was the classmate of Krishna. Who's that? The classmate of Krishna who was very poor in his adult life, huh? Sudama Brahman in Krishna Leela. Sudama Brahman, they went to school together, Krishna and Sudama. So in Gora Leela, he's Suklambara, and let's read. It's very, very pleasing. It had naturally a very affectionate relationship, just as Krishna and Sudama Brahman had. All glories to Gaurachandra, the Lord of all lords. All glories to Vishvambar and his beloved devotees. In this way, Lord Vishvambar constantly performs Sankirtan with the devotees in Navadvip. As they performed kirtan at night, the Lord closed the door from inside so that outsiders could not enter. One day, as the Lord was dancing in the house of Srivas, the mother-in-law of Srivas was hiding within the house. No one, including Srivas Pandit, knew about this. She hid behind a basket of grains in a corner of the room. What is the use of hiding? She did not have sufficient good fortune, and without sufficient fortune, no one can see the Lord's dancing. While dancing, the Lord repeatedly said, "Why am I not feeling happy today?" As the supersoul of all living entities, the Lord knows everything. Although he knows everything, he does not disclose this to enjoy his pastimes. As he danced, he repeatedly said, "I'm not feeling any happiness. Is there anyone hiding here?" They searched the entire house, and Srivas personally checked all the rooms. When it was determined that no outsider was there, they continued the kirtan. Sri Sachinandana, however, did not feel any ecstasy. The Lord stopped and said, "I'm not feeling happiness. Perhaps Krishna is not showing me mercy today." In fear, all the devotees thought, "There is no one here besides us. We must have committed some offense, therefore the Lord is not feeling any pleasure." Srivas again went inside and found his mother-in-law hiding there. Srivas Pandit was intoxicated with love for Krishna. How can one who has no external consciousness become proud? His body was shaking because of the Lord's words. He gave instructions to grab her by the hair and throw her out. Oh, wow. No one other than Srivas knew about this. Then Vishvambar began to dance in ecstasy. When the Lord said, "Now I am feeling joyful at heart," Srivas Pandit smiled and joined the kirtan. In the ecstasy of tumultuous kirtan, the Vaishnavas laughed and fell to the ground. The lion-like Gaurasundar danced in jubilation, and the most powerful Nityananda stretched his arms out to protect the Lord from falling. Who can see the pastimes of Lord Chaitanya? Only one who is favored by the Lord can see. Now there's a nice reference that's both in the Katha Upanishad and the Mundaka Upanishad that says essentially this. No one is able to see the Lord unless he personally permits them to see him. So the Lord can make himself visible even to those not qualified, but even those that are qualified, only they can only see him if he makes himself visible. Something to that effect. In this way, Gaurachandra daily performed kirtan, hidden from the view of the general public. On another day, when the Lord did not feel happiness while dancing, he looked all around. The Lord said, "Why am I not feeling happiness today? Have I offended anyone?" Advaita Acharya was naturally a devotee of Lord Chaitanya. He had no desire other than the service of Lord Chaitanya. When Lord Vishnubar sat on the throne of Vishnu and placed his lotus feet on everyone's head, and when the Lord manifested his opulence, Advaita floated in an ocean of happiness. Whenever the Lord said, "Oh, Nada, you are my servant," we had some discussion with some Bengali participants the other day. Nada in the local vernacular is Nara, right? You familiar with that? You two Bengali. Nada in vernacular or conventional languages, Nara. Yes? You're not familiar with that? No. Bengali. Respected elder, essentially. So it's Lord Chaitanya was referring to the elder Advaita Acharya as Nara or Nada. So he called him like that, like an affectionate address. Respected elder. Whenever the Lord said, "Oh, Nada, you are my servant," Advaita became unlimitedly blissful. No one can understand the inconceivable truth about Gauranga, who in the next moment would grab the feet of the Vaishnavas. Taking a straw between his teeth, he would cry, "Oh, dear Krishna, you are my life and soul." He cried in such a way that even stone would melt. The Lord constantly enjoyed his pastimes in the mood of a servant. When his mood as the Supreme Lord would break, he would speak to everyone as if he did not know everything. Quote, "If I ever engage in mischief, then please inform me so that I can die immediately." Krishna is my life and wealth. Krishna is my religious principle. All of you are my brothers and friends, birth after birth. I have no other goal than the service of Krishna. Help me understand this so that my mind does not deviate. All the Vaishnavas felt hesitant out of fear. They had no courage to speak in this way. When the Lord personally gave permission, then everyone could touch his feet. The Lord always remained in the mood of a servant. As soon as he would see a Vaishnav, he would respectfully stand up and take the dust from his feet. As a result, all the Vaishnavas would feel distressed. Therefore, he would embrace them. The Lord always respected Advaita as his spiritual master. This made Advaita most unhappy. He did not get an opportunity to directly serve the Lord. Rather, the Lord would grab his feet. The lotus feet that Advaita constantly meditated on were now directly present, and Advaita's desire was to always remain absorbed in them. He was unable to do so directly, however, for the Lord would become angry. Yet, he sometimes stole the dust from the Lord's feet. Whenever the Lord fell unconscious in ecstasy, Advaita approached his feet. He would then offer obeisances by falling flat on or at the Lord's lotus feet and wash those feet with tears from his eyes. Sometimes he would rub his head on the Lord's feet, and sometimes he worshipped the Lord with 6 ingredients. Such activities were possible only for Advaita because the Lord made him a great recipient of mercy. Therefore, Advaita is the foremost of all. All the Vaishnavas proclaim, "Advaita is indeed glorious." Such are the extraordinary glories of the lion like Advaita. The miscreants, however, do not know this confidential truth. One day, as Lord Vishnubar danced in ecstasy, Advaita danced behind him. When Advaita saw the Lord lose consciousness, he secretly took dust from the Lord's feet and smeared it on his body. Lord Gauranga knows unlimited pranks. When he continued dancing, he felt no happiness. The Lord said, "Why am I unable to capture the Lord in my heart? Who did I offend so that I'm not feeling happy? Or has some thief stolen from me? Is it because of that offense I am unable to dance? Has anyone taken dust from my feet? Do not worry, tell me the truth." When the devotees heard the words of the Lord who is present within everyone's heart, they did not say anything, but remained silent in fear. If they spoke, they would have to face Advaita, and if they didn't, they would be finished. Understanding this, Advaita replied with folded hands, "Listen, my dear Lord, a thief cannot get something openly. Then he should take it secretly. I have committed the theft. Please forgive me. I will not do it again if it displeases you." Vishwambar became greatly angry on hearing Advaita's words. In anger, he began to narrate the glories of Advaita. Contradictory behavior. "Even after annihilating the entire world, you're not satisfied. I alone remain after annihilation. When you annihilate me, then you'll be happy. When you kill even the ascetics, sannyasis, yogis, and renowned philosophers, who can remain safe from your trident? If someone comes to achieve your favor, you grab his feet and kill him. A great Vaishnava from Mathura came to see your glorious lotus feet. He was supposed to achieve devotional service to Vishnu by seeing you, but you even destroyed whatever spiritual strength he had. You destroyed him by taking the dust from his feet. You are most merciless in the act of destruction. Krishna has rightly endowed you with the devotion found in innumerable universes, yet you steal from an insignificant source. You have no comparison when it comes to destroying an insignificant creature. You are a great bandit and the greatest of all thieves. You have stolen my ecstatic love." As the Lord spoke the truth under some pretense in this way, the devotees floated in ecstasy. "You have stolen. Why can't I? Wait and see how I steal from a thief." After saying this, the Lord grabbed Advaita and laughed as he took dust from his feet. Advaita could not compete with the powerful lion like Gora, who rubbed Advaita's feet on his head. Holding Advaita's feet on his chest, the Lord said, "See how I have captured the thief in my embrace. A thief may steal hundreds of times, but a householder retrieves everything in one stroke." Advaita said, "Whatever you have said is true. But are you a householder? I don't know anything about that. My life, intelligence, mind, and body all belong to you, O Lord. If you annihilate me, who can protect me? You are the giver of happiness, and you are the giver of distress. If you punish someone, whose father can protect him? O Lord, when personalities like Narada visit Dwarka to see your lotus feet, which are their life and wealth, you take the dust from their feet. What can they do? This is my question. When you destroy your own servant, what can he do? Please consider. What to speak of taking dust from your feet? Who can even transgress your order? But when you act in this way, it does not increase your glories. After I get annihilated, you take pleasure. This body belongs to you. You may either protect or destroy it. O Lord, do whatever you wish." Vishwambar said, "You are the storekeeper of devotional service. That is why I serve your lotus feet. If one smears the dust from your lotus feet over his body, he will float in the mellows of ecstatic love for Krishna. If you do not distribute devotional service, no one can attain it. Know that I belong to you in all respects. You can sell me wherever you like. I tell you this in truth." On seeing the extraordinary mercy bestowed on Advaita, all the Vaishnavas were astonished. This great personality has truly served the Lord, for a fraction of the mercy he received cannot be compared to millions of liberations. Shiva rarely received such mercy as Advaita received from Lord Gauranga. We're also fortunate to have the association of such a devotee. We take the dust from this devotee on our eternal body. When such a devotee as Advaita Prabhu is joyfully glorified, sinful persons become distressed due to their past misdeeds. The topics of that time have been narrated by the Vaishnavas and are all factual. One who doubts their words is ruined. Lord Vishwambar stood up and chanted, Hari Bol. His followers sang on all sides. Advaitacharya was overwhelmed with ecstasy. He forgot everything as he danced like an intoxicated person. Advaitacharya, the Lord of Shantipur, touched his beard. We had some discussion. Does he have a beard or not a beard? And some say this and some say that. So here, he has a beard. But some say he doesn't. Touched his beard and roared loudly as he furrowed his eyebrows and danced. Day and night they all happily sang Jaya Krishna Gopal Govinda Vanamali. Although Lord Nityananda was greatly overwhelmed, he was expert in dancing with Lord Chaitanya. Whenever Lord Chaitanya was about to fall, the most powerful Nityananda stretched out his arms and carefully caught him. Lord Gauranga danced in unlimited ecstasy. One who has the power to describe that dancing? Balaram and Saraswati sing his glories to their full satisfaction. Sometimes the Lord lost consciousness. Sometimes his body shook. Sometimes he took straw between his teeth. And sometimes he became greatly proud. Sometimes he laughed. Sometimes he sighed deeply. And sometimes he became morose. In this way the Lord manifested his ecstatic love. Sometimes the Lord sat in the virasana posture, and sometimes he laughed loudly. As he bestowed mercy on everyone according to their good fortune, all the Vaishnavas drowned in an ocean of ecstasy. Seeing Suklambara Brahmachari standing before him, Lord Sri Gaurahari bestowed his mercy on him. Now, here are the topics regarding Suklambara Brahmachari, who lived in Navadvip, where the Lord appeared. He was, Suklambara, was always engaged in his occupational duties, and he was most peaceful. Although no one knew it, he was a great devotee. He would take a bag on his shoulder and go beg alms from house to house in Navadvip. He would cry while chanting the names of Krishna day and night. People thought he was a beggar and therefore could not recognize him. He was so poor that he had to beg alms to maintain himself. After begging during the day, the Brahmana offered whatever he received to Krishna and accepted Krishna's remnants. In the ecstasy of receiving Krishna's mercy, he did not know poverty. He would chant Krishna's names as he wandered from house to house. Who can recognize the recipient of Lord Chaitanya's mercy? Only one who is favored by the Lord is able. Suklambara engaged in the devotional service of Vishnu, just as the poor Damodar did previously. Now, commentary explains this. Damodar is Sridham. It's the same. Vishwambar bestowed such mercy on him that he could remain inside the house to watch the Lord dance. On seeing the Brahmana dance in ecstasy with his bag on his shoulder, the Lord and all the Vaishnavas laughed. As Vishwambar sat down in the mood of the Supreme Lord, Suklambara danced, cried, and laughed with his bag on his shoulder. While watching Suklambara, the merciful, most merciful Gauranga repeatedly called out, "Come, come, you are my poor servant, birth after birth. You give me everything and remain a beggar. I always desire your foodstuffs, even if you don't give me. I forcibly take and eat them. Did you forget that I forcibly ate your broken rice at Dwarka? Kamala, the goddess of fortune, caught hold of my hand. After speaking in this way, Vishwambar took a handful of uncooked rice from Suklambara's begging bag and began eating it. Suklambara exclaimed, "Oh Lord, you have ruined me. This rice is full of broken particles." The Lord replied, "I eat your broken rice, and I turn my face away from the nectar offered by non-devotees." The Lord, who is independent, full of ecstasy, and the life of the devotees, ate that uncooked rice. Who could stop him? On seeing the Lord's compassion, all the devotees began to cry while holding their heads. No one knew who fell where as they cried. Everyone was overwhelmed on seeing such compassion. They then began to chant the glories of Krishna in great ecstasy. Everyone cried, from the children on up to the aged. Someone held straw between his teeth. Someone offered obeisances, and another said, "Oh Lord, never leave me." The pious Shuklambar rolled on the ground as the Lord of Vaikuntha happily ate that rice. The Lord said, "Listen, Shuklambar, Brahmachari, I constantly enjoy pastimes in your heart. When you eat, I eat. When you walk about for begging, that is my walking. I have incarnated to distribute Prema Bhakti. You are my beloved servant, birth after birth. I now give you Prema Bhakti. Know for certain that Prema Bhakti is my life and soul." On hearing the benediction of Shuklambar that Shuklambar received, all the Vaishnavas chanted, "Jaya, Jaya, Hari Hari." The servant of Lakshmi's Lord, so that's Narayan. The servant of Lakshmi's Lord, that's Shuklambar, begs from door to door. What fortunate soul can understand the mystery of such pastimes? Whatever rice Shuklambar collected by begging at 10 houses was forcibly eaten by Gaurachandra, the husband of Lakshmi. The Lord, who is the reservoir of transcendental qualities, personally explained through the Vedas the rules for offering foods. He does not accept anything unless it is offered according to those rules. But he breaks all those injunctions for the sake of his devotees. The acceptance of Shuklambar's rice is the proof of this. Therefore, devotion is the life of all rules. All rules and regulations are servants of devotional service. One who is distressed because of this is vanquished. Vedavyas had stated that devotion is the root of all rules, and Gauranga has directly demonstrated this. Almost done. The Brahmana did not offer the rice with mudras, nor did he even offer it. Yet, nevertheless, the Lord eagerly ate it. Persons who are blinded by the pride of material enjoyment cannot understand this mystery. Intoxicated by their children, wealth, and family prestige, they cannot recognize a Vaishnava. Krishna never accepts the offerings and worship of one who ridicules a Vaishnava, considering him foolish or poor. That Sri Hari is controlled only by his devotees, does not even accept the worship of non-devotees, is explained in Srimad Bhagavatam 4:31-21 as follows. It gives the Sanskrit. All the Vedas sing, Krishna is the life and soul of those who have no material possessions. Gauranga personally demonstrated this. When he hears about how the Lord ate Shuklambar's rice, attains unalloyed devotional service at the feet of Lord Chaitanya. Accepting Lord Chaitanya and Nityananda Prabhu as my life and soul, I, Vrindavan Das, sing the glories of their lotus feet. Now, the principles of all of this, the principles of devotion, etc., are found in Bhagavad Gita and other standard texts. But the mature stage of what that looks like is what's here. As mentioned, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu came into this world, Krishna himself, as Krishna himself, in the mood of a devotee, to teach a life of devotion to the Supreme Lord, devotion to himself, calling the Lord's name, speaking the Lord's message, encouraging others to take shelter of him. He was in the mood of a devotee, Krishna in the mood of a devotee of Krishna, teaching devotion to Krishna. And, indirectly, we're hearing this very elevated position of spontaneous love for Krishna, as was Lord Chaitanya. He would oscillate back and forth between moods of being the devotee of the Lord and moods of being the Supreme Lord and extending his feet and sitting on the throne of Vishnu and so forth. And then back again, and just in a very spontaneous manner of ecstatic love. So he's an embodiment of ecstatic love. And though different ecstasies would simply, like a wave in the ocean, rise and then fall, and some other wave would come, and another wave would come, and another wave would come. And he was just like a living entity moving on the waves of the ocean of bhakti rasa. He was relishing. His devotees were relishing. Onlookers that had no faith, they couldn't understand anything, and they would criticize. It didn't stop him. He exhibited ecstasy nonetheless. But he was cautious, as circumstance permitted. He was cautious not to give teachings or to exhibit his ecstasies in front of worldly people. That's why he kept the doors locked. Because why? Because worldly people, not only they wouldn't understand, but they would criticize. And when they would criticize, they would get a reaction for that criticism. So it just wasn't visible purposefully. That was that little pastime of Srivasa's mother-in-law. So we don't know, I don't know at least, much detail about his mother-in-law and her status, because everybody else in their family were Vaishnavas. But somehow his mother-in-law just wasn't of the same status. And Lord Chaitanya was just teaching a lesson. Worldly people should not be given an opportunity to make offense to the Supreme Lord or the bhakti process or the chanting of the holy names. With that, having said all that, same as Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, that one should not teach this message to the faithless. Having said that, the Sankirtana movement of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu went everywhere, accessed by everybody. When Prabhupada requested his followers to go, he initially set the example for 3 hours every day, as busy as he was. 3 hours every day he would go into the public and chant in New York City, sitting in a park and chanting with the devotees while the devotees were dancing and singing very happily. And that's how the Hare Krishna movement began. He knew when doing that there would be some opposition. That didn't stop him. Or some people wouldn't understand. Some people would understand, some people wouldn't. He said in one lecture, there's a really nice little quote. Sometimes people would understand, sometimes they would not understand. Sometimes they would appreciate, sometimes they would not appreciate. We would chant anyways. And they would chant anyways meant he had full faith in the process of calling the holy name of the Lord, because it's what enjoined in Scripture, because Lord Chaitanya himself personally did the public chanting of the holy name. So that's how the Hare Krishna movement began. Didn't have a mridanga, little drum, little simple. In America, during that period of time, there was a certain kind of drum called the bongo drum that was popular. So he, put it under his arm and played the drum to keep the rhythm. There weren't cartels, so people would hit the lid of a pot or something, and it was very very simple. Some persons would play flute, some people would play a guitar, some people whatever their favorite musical instrument was, and accompany the kirtan. But the essence was some music, but the essence was the mantra and Prabhupada chanting, and it transformed hearts. I'm living proof. Just by hearing the chanting, Prabhupada chanting Hare Krishna. That was my first introduction to meeting Prabhupada at the university I was attending, and my life changed. So the congregational chanting of the holy name is so important. Inaugurated by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, what to speak of what that was like during his time, during his physical presence or spiritual presence in Navadvip. That's the period of time that we're looking at. And the devotees floated in ecstasy. And the ecstatic devotees like Suklambara, Das Brahmachari, Suklambara, being an eternal associate of the Lord, forgot the past association with the Lord. He was just attracted to Lord Chaitanya in that particular golden form, the golden form of a devotee of Krishna. And his heart was fully with Krishna. Suklambara. Just like Sudama's heart was fully absorbed in Krishna. So these are nice pastimes. And I don't know how that strikes your heart, since this came from the culture that you grew up in. To some extent, at least. I'm sure there's some cultural appreciation. I can't recite Bengali like Bengalis can recite Bengali, but I'm sure hearing it in Bengali would be very special. But we're just reading in English, just the translations, and there's nice commentary for this book written by Prabhupada's spiritual master Bhaktisiddhanta in Bengali, and then translated into English. So let's see if there's some discussion.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. The mood of ecstatic kirtan among the Sangha of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is very high level, and the ecstasy they feel is unknown to the common public. This is like it's like even reading how much appreciation we can how much we can see that intimate feelings and emotions. It's just impossible to penetrate and feel those. So is this the design, or is this how the Lord wanted to? In the material world, it's just not accessible to common man, and you have to go through the process of bhakti in order to get to that state, in just even appreciating and kind of entering into that feelings and emotions. And
yeah. Nice question. Yeah, the bhakti process essentially does two things. It cleanses the contamination, and the second is it awakens the original consciousness of the living entity. The original consciousness of the living entity is love of God, or perfected consciousness, Shuddha. Shuddha Sattva, pure, transcendently pure consciousness, in a mood of serving Krishna in love. So that's awakened by the process, cleansing and awakening. So in the mature stage of that bhakti process comes bhava and prema. So he's exhibiting that mature stage. And it comes from the practice, or the engaging in the purifying method. Purification comes, awakening comes, and these higher stages of consciousness spontaneously appear. Now he describes this, Lord Chaitanya describes this, as you know, I'm sure, to Mayavadi sannyasi, who was criticizing his singing and dancing and carrying on like a common person in his estimation, instead of studying Vedanta Sutra, because that's what sannyasis are supposed to do. So why do you do this? Lord Chaitanya's answer was very humble. He said, I was instructed by my spiritual master, you're a fool. You don't have the capacity to understand Vedanta Sutra, so just chant. So I followed his instruction, and then these transformations started to happen. So I went back to him and said, am I doing something wrong? These bodily symptoms are just spontaneously coming. And he was told, this is very good. This is the mature stage of prema, bhakti, symptomized by this and that. So it's the prema stage, the mature stage follows behind the immature, becoming matured by proper means, proper method, proper sadhana. So these stages are coming attractions, or the mature stage of bhakti. Not imitating, that's another thing. We don't imitate, but when the heart becomes cleansed, these are natural emotions and natural displays of those emotions. Very elevated, rarely achieved, but accessible. Okay.
So Mahaprabhu is feeling that in the heart that there is somebody inside the house that I'm not feeling the same ecstasy in my heart. So in this is, I mean, natural that if somebody is in some different mood, then it spoils the gathering. That's like commonly. But what I'm trying to understand is, in a big gatherings, there are different kind of emotions and feelings in the gatherings. That the sweetness of kirtan, does it spoil the sweetness of kirtan?
One could make an argument in that direction. My understanding is it's not like that. It's a pastime. Or in other words, during this period of time, they're at the house of Srivas, and the door is locked. And they do that for 1 year. After 1 year passes, the door is unlocked. And they go out into the public, through the streets, same thing. And so the ecstasy doesn't change because they unlock the door and now they're out in the public and there's envious people, etc. It's a pastime to teach something. And, to help, that's my understanding at least, and to assist the devotees so they need not worry. They need not worry about, perception of the public, because people may become self-conscious and they don't want to be self-conscious while chanting and dancing, so they can just be in a safe atmosphere and incubate that ecstasy nicely for 1 year, and then kaboom, went into the public. That answer? Anything else in the room? At the bottom.
I have a couple of questions. Like you were saying that every time there is always a devotee of Krishna. So who is the current devotee of Krishna in terms of Sri Chaitanya, or means in the current stage? How we can find him?
In 2021, you mean?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, one way, there's multiple ways to answer that question. One way is from Bhagavad Gita. Arjuna asked the same question. What's the symptoms of a Vaishnava? What's the symptoms of a self-realized soul, etc.? How does he walk? How does he sit? How does he speak? There's those kinds of explanations from Bhagavad Gita. They're symptoms. A thing is known by its symptoms or characteristics. So it's described in Bhagavad Gita. But it's, keeping it a little more simple. Lord Chaitanya was asked this question in Puri. It started with this. The group of devotees from a certain place, one by one, different groups, they would come. So they said, we're householders, we're attached, we don't know what the goal of life and how to achieve it. Please tell us, what's our duty as householders? The Lord Chaitanya said two things. As far as possible, always chant the holy name, and as far as possible, engage in yourself in the service of the Vaishnava. Question, who's a Vaishnava? How do you detect? What's the way of determining who is a Vaishnava, which is your question? And they asked the same question in 3 successive years. The first year, it was anyone that chants Krishna's name once. That's a Vaishnava. Next year was, the bar went up. A Vaishnava is one who follows regulations and they follow the sadhana process of bhakti nicely. That's a Vaishnava. And then the third year is the topmost stage of a Vaishnava is one who, just by seeing them, your mood of devotion becomes awakened and you want to serve Krishna. That's a Vaishnava. So, beginning, intermediate, and advanced. Kanishta, Madhyama, Uttama. So, there are different stages and grades of the trajectory of a Vaishnava. But in principle, a Vaishnava is one who accepts Vishnu as the object of worship. According to Bhagavad Gita, everyone has some tendency to worship. And if they don't worship Vishnu, they're going to worship something according to the modes of nature, because it's intrinsic to the soul to worship and have faith in something. So according to the modes of nature, there's different. But a Vaishnava is one who worships Vishnu in simple language. So there's gradations of those who worship Vishnu, beginning, intermediate, advanced. But those who worship Vishnu, that's a Vaishnava. And specifically, to worship Vishnu, then one requires, it's important, one requires the association of one who is a worshipper of Vishnu, because otherwise it stays dormant. Bhakti is the cause of bhakti. Bhakti to Vishnu is caused by association with the bhakta, who's carrying bhakti for Vishnu or Krishna in their heart. Then one becomes a Vaishnava, and then one continues in those activities that Vaishnavas do, and one furthers the stages of Vaishnavism or bhakti, Vishnu bhakti. So that's an answer to who's a Vaishnava. How do you tell? They worship Vishnu. So then what does worship of Vishnu look like? That's in Bhagavad Gita. That's how you tell a Vaishnava.
Okay, thank you.
Is that all right?
Yeah, thanks for the answer. So I can keep going, questioning here, okay?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so next question is mine, like all the goal of this, all this chanting and all, like create a devotee and make yourself as a peace. So you feel peace when you do chanting. So what is the ultimate goal? If suppose every animal, every human beings in the world started feeling the same, is that end? You got my question? Or
Well, it's not likely to happen.
okay,
So that's
there
not
is no
really
end.
what the aim is that every human being or every living being comes to the stage where they're Shuddha Bhaktas. But, just on a personal level, you want to know on a grand level, what's the aim, or the
Yeah,
personal
grand level.
Grand level.
Grand.
Well, the grand level is to relieve people of their distraction due to absorption in the temporary. Asat means temporary. Trishna means thirst. Thirst for the temporary, asat trishna. To relieve them of that asat trishna and to move them or nurture them towards sat. So absorption in sat. As much as people are willing to move from asat to sat. That's the goal. Ideally, those that are willing and able can take the stage of bhakti, prema bhakti. That's ideal. The realistic is that's not going to happen because conditioned souls are conditioned souls. So as much as the conditioned soul is willing to receive, to minimize the asat absorption and increase the sat absorption. So that's the goal. Then a big picture. Lord Chaitanya came to give the opportunity to all conditioned souls, the opportunity to achieve the highest perfection or to move towards it by the bhakti process. He was distributing bhakti, starting with the name and the other forms, the other limbs of bhakti. That's the big picture.
Okay, thank you. So my next question is, like, we are the Hindus and all are the oldest one, but we have different kind of religions, right? So is there any way that Sri Chaitanya or any of our books has been mentioned to other religions also? How they see that? Like his
How do other religions see Lord Chaitanya or bhakti or what?
What I mean by that, so I guess every religion still the same thing what we are feeling in the Hindus. Is that correct or it is different?
Kind of. I mean, let's say it this way. For the most part, there's exceptions. For the most part, religions teach the goal is love of God. For most part, religions teach there's a source of everything. That source of everything is God. And the goal is to come to the stage of love of God. Now, there are some atheistic religions, which is a misnomer. Some persons say God is not a person, he's an imperson, or it is an imperson.
I'm not going with that psychological.
Okay.
I'm going in the
For the
in terms-
theistic,
Yeah.
then in principle, connect with God, recognize God, worship God. That's in principle. It's similar. Then there's degrees of what does that look like? In other words, the Vaishnava principle is our senses are meant for the service of the master of the senses, not for indulgence. So some religions don't emphasize that. Some religions do not emphasize restrain your senses and engage them exclusively in service to Krishna.
Nyan, come. Keep going.
So you follow, like, say, taking intoxication. Some religions don't make a big deal about it. Some religions do make a big deal about it. Even within religions, some do and some don't. It's not so that the line is very unclear about indulgence and intoxication of different kinds. So the Vaishnava teachings are very clear. So that's one dimension. And then the stages of that, the do's and the do nots, the injunctions and the prohibitions, the vidhis and nishetas, the things you're supposed to do and not do. It's very clearly delineated, and there's a goal. The goal of that is to then direct your attention to God, not just you're religious, you follow the do's and avoid the don'ts. There's a purpose behind it. So what I'm saying here is the science is sometimes less clear, sometimes more clear. The principles are there's an alignment of the principles. Love God. But, there's different applications of that. Pray to God for stuff you need, for example. God, give me this, God, give me that. And Vaishnava teaches he's already going to take care, just like you take care of your son. He doesn't need to appeal for you to take care of him. The training, the parenting principle is to teach higher values to your son, so when he becomes an adult, you take care of his needs anyways. So teaching him character and values of life. So there's different emphasis. You follow? The principle of connecting with God and loving God, and he's the source of all things, and we're depending upon him for all things. That's common. And then there's diversities and stages of bhakti.
Okay, what one common theme I feel in all the religions? None of the religions is inclusive, all are exclusive, right? So what do I mean by that? Like Hindu started in Asian region, right? We never, means at least whatever the books I have read, I never got any clue that, okay, Hindus, there was any god was in Europe or any god was in America. The oldest book, all the stories has written are surrounded by India. Similarly, if I go to Christian, it will be different. Muslim is also different, and there are other. So it's like a region specific. Why? God should be across all the creature, right? All the world. So why all the story, what we know, why it's specific to region? So why not? Means my question is probably the second question I asked. Why God is not everywhere? Now we are spreading. Now in America also, Prabhupada came and he expressed his God. I got it, but why God itself was not there when it was started? Why Chaitanya Dev didn't came here itself and he didn't chant?
Why did Lord Chaitanya not appear in New York City instead of in Navadvip?
Yes.
That's what you're asking.
He should be in everywhere. My question is that.
He is. But it's natural. One answer, there's different answers. One answer is, it is natural for the Lord to appear where there's attraction for him or love for him. Natural attraction and love for him that's manifest. The Punya Bhumi is a nice place for the Lord to appear. And Europe and America and Australia and Africa is not Punya Bhumi.
Now, what do you mean by the Punya Bhumi? Like,
what do I mean? A land that's pious by nature. That's
but there is some other God, right? If I say Christian, right? He's also God in terms of some believers.
Your question was, why didn't he appear outside of India?
Yes, means
and
it's not only Hindus but other gods.
This is not an ism specific. It's a piety abundance specific, and the piety abundance has been in India in recent times, and even in ancient times. The appearance of the forms of the Lord appear where there's abundance of piety. So that is to say, the teachings are for everyone, and there's reciprocation, loving dealings with those who are particularly pious and affectionate to him. So he appears there and exchanges with them and appeals, as Lord Chaitanya appealed, that this chanting should be heard all over the world in every town and village. It wasn't geographic specific, but so Punya Bhumi, what that means is a land where people are pious. And historically, it's a fact. Historically, it's a fact that in India people are pious. When in the, without going into it too much, a little bit. In the beginning, in the Jewish faith and in the Christian faith, people were barbaric. They had to be taught, don't kill. The 10 Commandments, the first one, thou shalt not kill. You know, when you're dealing with people that they're barbaric, how are you going to teach them? But you have to teach them at least to be civilized. Christ taught, and when he appeared in a different part of the world than India. There's so much more that I have to tell, but you cannot bear to hear. Or I'm telling you of worldly things, and you're having difficulty what to speak of otherworldly things. So that's the audience in that part of the world where he appeared. But in India, it's another, the Punya Bhumi, so many amazing otherworldly things are described. I mean, without going into detail, so many otherworldly things. And people who have, with that piety, the capacity to discern and understand, buddhi, the intelligence to understand higher things. It's traditional within India. It's been, since the beginning of time. And outside, the Vedic culture at one time extended throughout India. Throughout the world. But the epicenter, that this is, one could argue, you might argue, hey, that's a perspective from a certain group of people, but then there's another group of people that look this way, and there's another group of people that look that way. So, you could go down that path if you like, but, historically, India has been a place, the people of India, not just where the Lord appeared, but the people of India have been exceptionally pious. There's scholars that say, if you really want to know about the religion, it's India. You want to know about spirituality, it's India. Other parts of the world have other things to offer, but spirituality is India. It's not just where the Lord appeared. It's the piety of the people. To take birth in India is a pious birth. It's good fortune. It's good fortune. Piety. So you may not like that idea, but that's my answer to your question.
Thank you. Okay, last question. So I'm take time. So in Hindus, we have a different form of God. So if someone follow one God, does the effect is same?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Now, there's some detail.
Okay.
There's the Vaikuntha planets. That's the spiritual world. Vaikuntha planets, right? Vaikuntha is without kunta, without anxiety.
Oh.
That's the spiritual. There's material realm, and there's beyond the material realm. In that beyond the material realm, there's a spiritual sky, and in that spiritual sky, there's spiritual planets. They're known as Vaikuntha planets, and there's a certain mood, awe, and veneration, because the Lord is exhibiting the fullness of his opulences. So I'm now giving some detail. So those that become perfect lovers of God go to that place. Then within that Vaikuntha realm, according to the Vedic scriptures, topmost is Ayodhya, because the intimacy in Ayodhya is beyond that of Vaikuntha. That is to say, Lord Ramachandra has a mother and father. Narayan doesn't have a mother and father. There's an intimacy that excels, the intimacy of love, that excels Vaikuntha, where it's just awe and veneration. Then there's in the spiritual hierarchy, not geographic hierarchy, there's Krishna Loka, and within Krishna Loka there's degrees of intimacy. Dwarka, opulence, Dwarka, Purushottama, the Supreme Person, but he has 16,000 wives and has, etc., etc., etc. The whole Yadu dynasty, and there's loving relationships of different rasas. And then keep going, and you get to Vrindavan, and people don't even think of him as the all opulent supreme. It's just our beloved son or a dear friend, and they play with him. So there's degrees of intimacy in the spiritual realm. Now back to your question, is the destination the same? Yeah. But then there's also degrees of intimacy in that loving exchange. And so it depends on one's understanding and the association that one takes to get to that stage of love of God. And different gradations of that love of God. You're a talkative one. Chatterbox.
Thank you.
Hare Krishna. You have something?
Hare Krishna Maharaj.
Take your mask down so I can hear you better.
Okay. Thank you for all those pastimes. They are so nectarian. I'm so happy I came today here.
Keep it closer. I can hear you. He's adjusting the volume. You just keep speaking.
Okay. So there is a pastime where Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he gets angry, I think, on Shivas because he told the...
Chaitanya Mahaprabhu did what?
He got angry because, I think out of humility, he got angry because the dust was stolen.
That's a rasa.
Okay.
It's not real anger, like we know anger.
So I understood that it was out of humility, and because although he got angry, he was glorifying him later because...
Yeah, it's anger of this world is not the anger that Lord Chaitanya exhibited. Mm-hmm. The anger that Lord Chaitanya exhibited is not the anger of this world. Mm-hmm. It was a loving exchange with Advaita. Mm-hmm. And they're calling each other thieves. Mm-hmm. But it's loving. Mm-hmm.
So that was out of humility, right?
It's rasa.
Rasa, okay. So
it's a loving exchange. I'm sure. I'm not sure I'm getting the question. Am I missing the point?
The question is, in general, it's not a stealing if we take dust off any exalted devotee. Right?
Oh, in this world, is it okay to take the dust from someone's feet?
Yes.
It depends on the person.
Okay.
Some persons say no problem. Some persons say problem.
Okay. Okay. Because I've seen some just also take it secretly when the devotee has passed, and then that is fine.
Every individual has a personality. Good, thank God. And for some personalities, it's just okay because it's a cultural thing, and they don't take it as it's about me. It's about a cultural thing, and some persons have a problem, Bhakti Siddhanta, Prabhupada's spiritual master, he absolutely forbid people from touching his feet. there was a circumstance where he spoke so eloquently. It was the details, but it was this big hubbub between this group and that group of intellectuals in Bengal. And it was like, it was going to be bloodshed. He spoke in such a way, both parties were mesmerized, fully satisfied, and fully pacified. And at the end, there was a standing ovation. And he was getting ready to leave, and they wanted to touch his feet. And he wouldn't let anybody touch his feet. So the police had to intervene because they understood this is going to be a riot. These are Bengalis that want to touch his feet. So they got a big bucket, put his feet in the water, and then sprinkled the water. But he didn't let people touch his feet. Somebody else might allow that, but that was his mood. So you don't touch the feet if somebody doesn't want their feet touched. Certainly not Bhaktisiddhanta. But your question is it okay? Is it an offense? It's not an offense. Depends on the mood of that devotee. It's not a problem.
So
depending.
we have to ask before doing it?
Yes.
Okay.
Or culturally, what many people will do is they'll bow, they'll, before the person's foot touch the ground or something like that, so as to not, have to ask them, it's okay, can I touch your feet? Now, when people ask me, can I touch your feet? The answer is no. Say, okay. But that's me. And someone else, it's not a problem.
Okay.
Or foot wash. Cultured people, sannyasi comes to the home, can we wash your feet? The answer for me is no. And for some people, it's not a problem because it's just honoring a cultural way of respecting a sannyasi. It depends on the person. So you have to ask.
Okay. Thank you, Maharaj.
That was your question. I'm sorry, I didn't understand your question.
No, I had not completed. I'm so sorry. So, and another one is regarding Suklambara Brahmana.
Regarding?
Suklambara Brahmana.
Suklambara, okay.
There is some narration which mentions the words Damodar and Sri Dam. I did not understand that clearly, actually. What is that?
My understanding is this. There are different ways of identifying the same person. The person in Krishna's Leela is consistently spoken of as Sudama. In the commentary, it explains this word Sridham means Sudama.
Okay.
It's referring to that person, Sudama Brahman, but it's using some other names instead of that one that we're used to.
Because Sridham there is another personality.
It's another personality, it's another name, but it's referring to Sudama.
Okay.
The commentary speaks like that.
Okay. Why?
Because I was also confused when I read it. But the commentary makes it clear.
So Damodar is Krishna only, right?
Sudama is the person in Krishna's Leela, his classmate.
Okay.
They went to school together, and then later they grew up, and Sudama became a very austere Brahmana householder. Krishna became a Kshatriya householder. And Sudama went to visit Krishna in Dwarka.
Yeah.
That same Sudama is the one being referred to here. It's sometimes referred to this way, sometimes that way, but it's that one, same one.
Okay. Yeah, thank you for clarifying. Otherwise, if you read, it made me feel why Sridham is mentioned here.
I don't know why.
So it means the same.
Can you find that in the commentary? She has her computer, and the computer has Bhaktisiddhanta's commentary. Okay. Anything else?
Thank you, Maharaj.
I'll look that up about Damodar and Sridham later, but in Gaur Gunadesh Deepika, actually it is said that Suklambara Brahmachari was the Yagnik Patnis, and some say that it's the Yagnik Brahmana also.
Oh. The wives of the Brahmanas.
The wives of the Brahmana, that's what this, it said that he's the incarnation of one of the Yagnapatnis. But then some also say that he's, Yagnik Brahmana.
But it's also referred to here as Sudama.
Sudama, yeah. So maybe he's
both.
Maybe it is this thing of, Yagnapatnis also gave in charity. That's what it's mentioned here. Yagnapatnis who gave food in charity to Krishna and his friends.
So that doesn't explain.
Seems like the charity principle, or
it doesn't explain Sri Dam and Damodar.
No, that I have to look up. I haven't looked up yet.
Okay.
But adding more to the confusion.
So let's see if we have something online.
This one question, Amara. Hare Krishna Guru Maharaj, recently we received this verse from Katha Upanishad 1:2-23. The Supreme Lord is not attained by expert explanations, by vast intelligence, nor even by much hearing. He is attained only by one who he himself chooses. To such a person, he manifests his own form. Can you kindly explain how should sadhakas understand this to retain and increase their enthusiasm?
Easy. Beg for his mercy that you wish to attain. Because that's what's attaining him is dependent upon. So now you know what channel to follow, and follow the channel as a sadhaka. Okay.
So the commentary, all it says, Suklambara engaged, so this is the translation, the Suklambara engaged in the devotional service of Vishnu, just as the poor Damodar did previously. The word Damodar refers to the Brahmana named Sridam or Sudam. He was Krishna's friend and companion. That's it.
Yeah, okay.
And yeah, that's it.
But the Leela that's being described specifically is Sudama Brahman and his broken rice and all of that. So it's multiple faceted Suklambara brahmachari.
So this is Sridama, it says, but Sridama. So that is same as Sudama. It looks like Sudama was also known as Sridama.
Okay, it's all over the place. Fireworks and 4th of July. Srila Prabhupada ki. Jai.